What's up, guys, and welcome to the first edition of the Texas MMA podcast, an extension of TXMMA.com, which we like to think of as your state resource for everything that's going on in combat sports, specifically here in Texas. So what that means for us is, your MMA cards, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, kickboxing that's happening more and more often. We just want to be able to provide this information for you, the community. What this podcast is going to be, basically, there's so much going on nowadays that we'd have to write 50 articles a day just to keep up. And we have day jobs and we have, personal stuff going on. So we thought this might actually be easier. This is my co-host, Felix Rodriguez. He's been covering the sport and state with me for the last 2 years. Felix, what do you like about covering the fight game specifically here in Texas?
Well, I'm a fight nerd first and foremost. I love all forms of combat sports, and getting to cover the sport in Texas is awesome because I've gotten to see a lot of amazing fighters and martial artists blossom on the mats and in the cage, see them progress as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialists and also as mixed martial artists, and even go on to the UFC. I'm kind of fortunate to get to see that up close with you guys and cover the sport for y'all. So thank you, very fortunate.
So with this being our first show, we don't quite know how it's going to go. We set up our outline maybe like 10 minutes ago. But our goal here is just basically to provide you guys with some good information. So with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about our People's Choice Awards that just came up, recent events in terms of fight cards that happened in the state. Just in the last 2 weeks, I think we've had 3 cards, 2 tournaments. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we're going to talk about that, highlight some fighters that performed well in both the awards and the recent fight cards, and then segue into UFC 183, Legacy 39, I think that's going on in Dallas, and anything else that may come up, including the Houston Open. First and foremost, we just want to talk a little bit about our People's Choice Awards or our Texas MMA Awards in general. We started this 3 years ago, basically just as a means to, once again, get everybody's name out there. As of now, we don't have a sponsor. We don't make a single sponsorship dollar off the awards. What we just want to do is get people's names out there. So we have 2 different parts of the awards, right? One is the official awards, which is merit-based. It's about highlighting performance, how guys did specifically last year. And then the other part is a People's Choice Awards. It was really cool this year. About 5,000 to 6,000 people actually contributed and voted via our Facebook group page, Texas MMA group page. And we got a lot of recognition for the fighters out of it. And hopefully, especially with the Jiu-Jitsu side and with the MMA side, if one of those guys that voted for their friends or the fighters that they support get interested in training, we've accomplished our goal. We've added to the growth of the sport, which is our ultimate, kind of master plan here at Texas MMA.
And one of the things we want to say is we've been doing this for 3 years. We're human. Sometimes we oversee and forget about people, and it's not that we're ignoring you or that we're snubbing you. It's that, we're human beings and we make mistakes sometimes. So if you feel like you've been snubbed, try a little harder. We will probably notice you next year. Our apologies if you were deserving and we left you out. We'll try to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So the People's Choice Awards, specifically on the MMA side, they're really interesting because it doesn't necessarily have to be the guy that's won the title that ultimately wins the award. It's the guy that gets the most support and really rallies their fans. Our first awardee in terms of the UFC Fighter of the Year was Carlos Diego Ferreira. I think last year there was about 7 to 10 guys just from Texas alone that fight in the UFC, including Johnny Hendricks that won the UFC title from Robbie Lawler earlier this year in Dallas, right?
Yes, sir.
What do you think about Diego winning that award? And what are your thoughts on him as a fighter?
Well, first off, I think Carlos Diego is deserving. He kind of dominated the scene and then moved on to the UFC, had a couple of very impressive performances. His submission over Colton Smith was amazing. I think it was a judo throw to a rear naked choke immediately. It was a beautiful transition.
In Texas, in San Antonio, I believe.
Yes, sir. And I love watching him as a fighter. I've been following him very closely since he was in Legacy and in Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. I became a super fan of his when I was photographing him in Corpus Christi. I forget what Legacy against Carlo Prater, and the very same evening he flew for the Mundials.
Yeah, and I saw him the next day in California. That was pretty crazy.
That was insanity. I remember we were covering coast to coast. The other cool thing is that his striking is very underrated.
He's got a capoeira background from Amazonas. When he lived in Manaus. So, most people know him as the four-stripe black belt that's really taken over the Texas tournament scene, but the guy's not a novice striker.
Not at all. And if you guys don't believe us, you should try to watch his fight with Macaco. It's pretty amazing stuff.
And he's a humble guy, which is awesome. So well-deserved, Carlos Diego. Congratulations for that. Also, a nod to Johnny Hendricks. Statistically, I mean, nothing can beat, winning a UFC title. And he won it last year. So, props to Johnny. On the regional side, there were a lot of guys that could be considered for Fighter of the Year last year. Even for the official awards, which we haven't tabulated yet, there's a lot to think about. Derek Krantz, he beat 2 UFC vets last year. Chris Gutierrez and Alex Black, those are 2 guys that are coming up, so that's the future. But the guy who won it last year was Jamal Emmers, who he won the award off a 3-0 campaign in 2014. He was a champion, a welterweight champion for Hero FC down in South Texas. Do you know a lot about him?
I actually don't know too much of him. We've just covered him very briefly. I think he's an up-and-coming fighter for sure. Again, the People's Choice Awards is a popularity vote. I'm sorry, it's not necessarily merit-based, but kudos to him for being able to conjure up so much support in the MMA community.
And going 3-0 last year. I mean,
definitely, that's a hard feat. Fighting 3 times a year and not losing is a big accomplishment for sure.
Now, speaking of up-and-comers, Rookie of the Year it was actually a teammate of Johnny Hendricks, Mark De La Rosa, who won. He's 2-0. And I think you've seen him in some grappling tournaments in the past, right?
I have. I've seen Mark De La Rosa a lot. And I think he's a purple belt under Albert Hughes in Genesis Jiu-Jitsu, if I'm not mistaken. And he's really a good kid. He comes from a good team, works hard. If you follow him on Facebook, he's always posting stuff of him doing parachute sprints, working on his cardio, doing cone drills. I mean, he puts the extra effort. He knows that MMA, to be successful, you have to do more than just fight. You actually have to condition your body and prepare yourself for wars.
Now, I'm just going to gloss over a couple of these awards because I think there was almost 30 on the MMA side and 30 more on the Jiu-Jitsu, so we don't want to spend the whole show on this. But Levi Miles and Adrian Yanez won the Fight of the Year, surprisingly, over guys like Domingo Pilarte. He fought Caio Machado at Legacy in Houston, and that was a sick fight.
I was covered in mucus and blood at that fight. After Caio Machado zonked Domingo over the nose. I was right by them in the cage and just covered the camera and snot. It was probably the grossest experience I've had in MMA and also the coolest. Thank you, Caio and Domingo, for that.
Now, as far as Miles and Yanez, they're gonna both have great careers. But that fight, man, that was a sick display of grappling by Levi. It says a lot about him, and I think he's got a great fight coming up in Dallas that we'll talk about a little bit later, again in Legacy. Knockout of the Year went to Danny Salinas. He pulled a crow cop-like head kick and knocked his opponent clean out at STFC 29, so props to him. Submission of the Year went to Derek Krantz, D-Rock. He was facing a UFC vet, and Daniel Roberts, and hit him with a Von Flu choke, pillow choke, right?
And he is now a brown belt under Be Quick Jiu-Jitsu.
That was ridiculous. On the women's side, the end of December actually brought a very monumental moment to Texas MMA with Invicta coming to town. And there was a couple of Texas fighters on the card. Tanya Evinger was on the card. Jin Yu Frey. All these great women on the card. In terms of women, before I talk about the award winners, Felix, who in Texas really interests you in terms of women fighters?
The whole Moeller MMA house, they have a really sick crew of female fighters. Amber Stautzenberger Grimsley, because she just got married. Of course, Jin Frey. B. Gwen is an up-and-coming fighter that has a really strong Muay Thai base, and if her jiu-jitsu catches up to her striking, she could do a lot of good things.
Two other fighters from Houston. Dallas has a really strong women's not program, but just women fighters training in the city. They're phenomenal. Houston's starting to come up too. Tanya Evinger, who's a longtime MMA veteran, fought in Japan, is now an Invicta title contender. She won her Fighter of the Year, and her significant other, Stephanie Alba from Gracie Barra Champions Forest, she won the Rookie of the Year. She had a tough going at the end of her amateur career, but she pulled it off and went 2-0 as a pro in 2014. So that says a lot about her improvement. Amber Stautzenberger won Fight of the Year against Katina Catron from XKO 23, so congrats to her. And Haley Hack won won Submission of the Year with her submission over Lene Lovato at AAA MMA. So congrats to them. On the MMA side, Felix, who are some of the fighters that shine out to you before I talk about these awards?
There's a lot of, I mean, there's so many good fighters in Texas that I almost like feel bad trying to pick a few because I know that the rest of you are going to get butthurt. So, really entertaining fighter, Ryan Hollis. That kid puts on a show always.
But he's a pro now, he's not an amateur.
Oh, we're on amateurs right now, sorry. Let's see. I'm actually drawing blanks right now.
Okay, well, Fighter of the Year. We know why that is.
Yeah.
Fighter of the Year, Levi Miles and Ulysses Aguilar, two guys from Dallas. Levi from Be Quick, Ulysses from Team Takedown. They won Fighter of the Year. They actually tied with the voting. I counted these like right at midnight on a Sunday. It was horrible. I had to go to work the next day. But some of these categories are so close that I had to count literally at the last second, and they came out with 116 votes each. So that speaks volumes about both of the support that they have. Catherine Roy from Jiu-Jitsu MMA in New Braunfels, she won Female Fighter of the Year. Tyler Pacheco versus Casey Ware at 24/7, they won Fight of the Year. And on the male side, Brandy Narvaez versus Laura Ashby won on the female side with PCG. In terms of knockout and submission, it was Jason Lobach-Lentz and Dayron Vazquez that won. And in the submission of the year category, Dayron was going neck to neck with Damien Orende. And Damien Orende at Cage Combat broke his opponent's arm.
Yes, that was pretty
We posted that on our Facebook page, and it got 200,000 views in the first, I don't know, day and a half. It was ridiculous.
It's been actually a great year for Damien Orende. Didn't he win Pans at Blue Belt, I believe, this year? The past year, I mean.
Quite honestly, I don't know, but good job to him on that award.
Yeah, great prospect out of Elite MMA. Good job.
Now, Team of the Year, Jiu-Jitsu MMA actually won Team of the Year and Coach of the Year with Billy Bush and Jiu-Jitsu. Last year was their first year of existence. It was ridiculous of the People's Choice. They beat out more established teams like Octagon MMA and 4 Ounce Fight Club, which both have multiple UFC fighters on the roster, so congrats to them. Striking coach went to Carlos Moreno out of Simestar Muay Thai. He's an Arjan, I don't know how to pronounce it, but he's a master teacher at Muay Thai, so congrats to him. And the rest of the awards, you know what? They're on our website, TXMMA.com, so that's it for the MMA side. Let's move on to Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu, these awards, let me tell you, People's Choice, people have, or these competitors and coaches, they have people voting from thousands of people. It's ridiculous. The last couple of years, the team awards have been dominated by Bruno Bastos and Alvarez BJJ. Alvarez has a ton of competitors that compete internationally and locally here in Texas, and they're part of Bruno's association, which also has a lot of top-level competitors. So not taking anything away from any of the other teams in Texas in terms of, Checkmat, Gracie Baja, Elite MMA, Rodrigo Pinero's Academy. I could go on and on and on, but, props to Bruno and Mr. Alvarez for, doing what they've done to put things together.
They're road warriors. They're really everywhere. They're extremely competition-focused team, and especially Danny Alvarez and their crew, they're very wrestling-based as well. They've incorporated wrestling into their program very successfully. They got some really, really good people there. I believe Cooper Cardinale's out of there. He just got his brown belt.
Cooper Cardinale, Ryan Sandhagen, Daniel Alvarez, Miriam Villar. We're probably going to talk about a lot of these guys in a little bit, but those guys, they all compete regularly. Like, I don't even know if they have day jobs. I don't know if they have a trust fund that they just fly everywhere, or their mom works for the airline, or whatever. But those guys just manage to be everywhere around the globe, and that's really, really impressive.
They spend more time on the mats than we do, which is kind of crazy.
Yep. Daniel Alvarez, she's a purple belt under her dad. She's not just a full-time competitor, she's also a full-time student. She went to Texas State. She's now going to school closer to Arlington so she could train at her academy while going to school and managing, work duties, coaching, whatever she might be doing. It's really tough to balance all that, and it's just, I have a tremendous amount of respect for anybody who can go in and do all that work, succeed, and have a good attitude about it. So they've got their head on their shoulders, right? In terms of the belt level awards, Black Belt of the Year, Carlos Diego, he won again, the People's Choice. And Alan Shabaro won the Masters Award. He actually overtook Daniel Alvarez to win the award, and that's impressive. He's a really popular guy out in Dallas, and he's not just a top-level jiu-jitsu competitor. He's also a CrossFitter. I think yesterday I saw him bench press a Volkswagen or something like that. So
that is a big dude.
It's a big dude. Brown belt, Jose Portillo won at the adult level. Jeff Hammond won at the master's level. Both of those guys had a great year. Kevin Cordova and Andy Cordova won adult at purple and blue. Meanwhile, at masters, Jordan Shepler and Jerry Brown, they won. And to round it off for the guys, Daniel Alvarado, also another up-and-comer at white belt, as much as you can say for white belt. He's another guy that's coming up from Alvarez. Meanwhile, Mike Damascio from Travis Luter, he won at the master's level. A little bit less awards on the female side, considering a lot of what we do is stats-based, and there's just the amount of female competitors is just starting to catch up. But Fabiana Borges won at the black belt level. Tysa Drum out of Soul Fighters won at brown. Daniel Alvarez won at purple. Natalia Shepler, Miriam Villar, and Christina Parker, all from Alvarez BJJ, won the rest of the levels from Masters Blue and Adult Blue to Adult White Belt. We'll go over the rest of the awards as far as the People's Choice on our website, so if you want to look at that, feel free to do that at your leisure. The official awards for both the MMA side and the Jiu-Jitsu side will be out within, I don't know when this podcast is going to get released, but within the next week. And, we're going to talk about some upcoming or some recent events that happened in just a minute, so go check this out. Go listen to our sponsors for a second. We'll be right back.
My name is Carlos Diego Ferreira, and I believe in hard work, in dedication, and drive. I never quit. I welcome challenges. My profession demands I train harder and be mentally prepared for my opponents. If I'm knocked down, I get back up every time. I'm never out of the fight. Pain does not intimidate me. I will accept discomfort. I train hard every day because I know the victory is the destination, but the hard work will get me there. I have heart, I have a drive, I have a determination, I have a motivation. My focus cannot be shaken. I can endure physical punishment. I welcome physical exhaustion. Tomorrow I will do it again. I was born to fight. I live to fight. And I will die fighting. My name is Carlos Diego Ferreira. I am worth trying. I was born for this.
All right, guys, we're back with the first edition of the Texas MMA podcast. Next, we'd like to talk about some of the recent events that have happened ever since 2015 kicked off. The most interesting thing that happened in terms of 2015 so far has to be the Legacy Kickboxing card. It was their debut event. Last year for Mick Maynard and his crew was a big year in terms of they traveled all over doing MMA events. But now they're also doing kickboxing on AXS TV, which is, it's real kickboxing. It's just like Glory. It's just like, I guess our version of K1 here in Texas, or it's not just going to be in Texas, it's going to be everywhere, I'm sure, but it's another thing to add to our combat sports fold, which is really cool. What were your thoughts on that event as it led up?
I thought the event was awesome, actually. The production was, as always, one of the better and more polished ones in Texas. A lot of decisions. It was kind of a gory event. I think there were 2 arm breaks, if memory serves me right. And there was a little bit of controversy as far as the Pat Barry fight. A lot of people felt like he did not deserve that decision win. But, you know, they say don't leave it in the hands of the judges, and certainly don't leave it in the hands of TDLR judges, is what some of the people like to say here.
Right. As far as the card itself, though, it was pretty cool in the sense that it had, you know, a whole variety of talent. I mean, there was UFC guys like Pat Barry that you just mentioned, Miguel Torres, a former, you know, WEC champion that transitioned into the UFC. I mean, he's a legend in the sport. He competed on the card. So did, you know, Cosmo Alexandre, another legacy veteran, as well as some kickboxing stars. Michael Chase Corley, who teaches out of Houston Muay Thai in Houston. You know, he's probably the biggest local favorite on the card, or one of the biggest. Angel Huerta fought on the card.
Awesome striking display by Angel Huerta. And I think Alex Morano was who broke one of the arms.
Yep.
If my memory doesn't serve. It was gruesome. Good job, Alex, by the way.
Yep. Along with some, and there was also some, you know, kickboxing, more kickboxing guys. Like besides Chase, there was Marco Piqué and Valentina Shmalenko, who they say is like the kickboxing equivalent of not Holly. I'd like to see her fight Holly Holm, but the kickboxing equivalent of like a Ronda Rousey. You know, she had like a 50-2 kickboxing record, so that was really impressive.
That lady is a monster. And it's always nice to see Patrick Hutton pick up a win, one of the like nicer guys in the Texas combat sports scenes. Colby Northcutt is an up-and-comer who like also had a good display there. I think she beat Shannon Morton, one of the coaches from Revolution Dojo, San Mongonia.
Right.
Also had a good showing.
Now, as far as that card, what was your highlight fight?
Angel Huerta versus Miguel Torres, just because.
Did you see that video on YouTube where he shattered his knee? I mean, he didn't physically shatter his knee, but it looked like he caved it in.
It looked like the John Jones push kick to the side of the knee, and a lot of people felt like it was a foul. I don't necessarily agree with that assessment. I think Angel Huerta put on an amazing striking display. He was up against a named fighter in Miguel Torres. That alone would have intimidated a lot of people, but Angel Huerta showed up to fight. And Angel, if you're watching, I will be Razor Ramon next Halloween in your honor, bro.
Nice. As far as my pick for fight of the night, it would have to be Angel and Miguel. I mean, those two guys just brought it. But also, you know, Valentina and Lindsay Haycraft, another MMA fighter, those girls put on a show too. So that was pretty impressive.
Alex Morano by fatality would like probably be my highlight of the whole card.
Yeah,
sure.
He was. Lucas Pimenta, his opponent, was blocking a kick like this, and Alex just hit and shattered his forearm immediately. I mean, it was like a minute into the fight, and it was really impressive on Alex's part, but at the same time, it was almost disappointing because Lucas is a talent too. I wanted to see them go a little longer, but hey, what can you do when an arm's broken, right?
I threw up a little bit in my mouth, but it was a good fight.
Now, just looking on my phone here, there was, you know, 3 other big events that have happened so far in 2014 already. The first one, XKO 24, was their 5th anniversary show up in Arlington, the DFW area. Audrey Alvarez won the main event by a decision over Alice Yager. Alfredo Leja beat Alan Nelson by TKO in the co-main event. Steve Hess beat JJ Holmes, which is always an impressive victory. Eddie Whitturn got another submission win.
Didn't JJ Holmes just get his black belt?
He did just get his black belt. He did just open in school, and he did just win the absolute over at Fight to Win, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next up, Fury Fighting Championship debuted in San Antonio actually this past weekend. 2 guys in particular highlighted that show. There was Jonathan Martinez. He's fighting out of Plainview, Texas, I believe. He beat CJ Vergara, who trains under Pete Spratt, by split decision. And that's, you know, when we talked about the awards and guys that we missed, Jonathan Martinez is one of them. He fought all in Oklahoma last year, so it was easy for us to miss on the Texas cards, but he's from Texas. He went 5-0 last year, and he just beat this top guy, Vergara, who has a win over Legacy Pro Elias Garcia as an amateur. So that guy's coming up, and then this guy Martinez won. That's a name to keep out for. Another guy that really impressed me from Fury was Chris Lopez. You know Chris Lopez personally.
He just bounced from an injury. He's been on the shelf for about a year.
Now,
and it's good to see him bounce back, man.
Right, and he was fighting Rocky Long, and Rocky's record, I don't know what it is. He's got like 100 fights, 20 kids, 30, 30 something, he's only 32 years old. I joke about Rocky, but man, that guy's a veteran. He's been fighting since Renegades for Saul. That guy, if there's like a list of maybe 5 or 6 or 7 people that have come out of Texas and were one of the pioneers initially in the sport, Rocky's definitely one of them. And Chris was able to come back and finish him by TKO in the second round.
Chris is undefeated. If he can remain injury-free and continue doing what he's doing, he's a very dedicated athlete. He could probably do big things in the sport. He's a very powerful guy, has excellent finishing ability, as you've seen by some of his knockouts in his previous fights. Is he 5 or 4 now? I can't remember.
I think he's 5-0 now. And one thing about Chris, I mean, that guy is he's a serious dude, man. Like, he's really critical of himself. When he won in San Antonio over Rocky, which is a feat, Rocky's a hard guy to finish, Chris was there with his head down, getting his hand raised, talking about how pissed off he was at his performance. How can you be pissed off about a TKO win?
Consummate perfectionist, man. That's good and bad.
Yeah, so he did really good. Congratulations to Chris. Congratulations to Martinez and everybody else that won over in San Antonio this past weekend. Last card I want to talk about that recently happened was Hero FC. Really, one fighter in particular really impressed me. We talked about Jamal Emmers earlier winning the Regional Fighter of the Year for 2014, coming out of last year with a 3-0 record. Ray Trujillo beat him in the main event. Now, I don't know if you've seen the results yet, but how do you think Ray? If I told you Ray won, how would you guess that he won?
If it's Ray Trujillo, I would normally assume it would be a finish by striking, but I'm guessing he won by submission.
This dude hit a second round triangle.
Go Ray!
I didn't even know Ray hit the floor voluntarily, but apparently he took down Emmers a couple of times after shaking off some rust in the beginning, and he pulled off a second round triangle victory over a much bigger, some would say, more athletic opponent. But man, Ray's just somebody that you can't ever count out. And I would say that if I was going to get in a fist fight, not that we condone that, Ray would probably be one of the top 3 or 4 fighters that I would bring from Texas. Unless, Derek Lewis is on the other side, then in which case I just run away.
You want your cornbread. Now, one thing of note about this card that's kind of bittersweet, I believe this was the last fight for Ray Rodriguez. It was his retirement fight. Unfortunately, it didn't go his way. Ray, thank you for everything you've done, all of the shows you put on. You always came to fight. You always left it all in the cage. So we really appreciate your career, and thanks again for everything that you've done to grow the sport of MMA in Texas.
So those are all the recent things that happened. 2 more recent events happened. We're not going to gloss over them too long just for time, and we don't want this to be like a boring 2-hour podcast. If it's boring right now, go get a beer, come back, we'll still be talking. But 2 of the things that happened recently that we covered were 2 jiu-jitsu tournaments. One was American Grappling Federation's Winter Classic in Dallas at the Bob Knight Fieldhouse. And just this past weekend, Fight to Win had their Tournament of Champions 15 here in Houston. Both great events. AGF has some new mats that makes it a lot easier. They still yell banner and you still got to run around and it's really annoying. But as far as for the competitor, they offer a great experience, really professionally run organization. Same with Brett and Seth over at Fight to Win. I mean, their tournaments are efficient, they're fast. They have probably the greatest bracketing system that I've seen in terms of how fast they get the matches over there and done while not rushing anybody. It's just really seamless and efficient. You've covered a lot of their tournaments, both AGF and Fight to Win. What do you have to say about them?
The one thing about AGF that I really like from a martial artist standpoint, because I also compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu every now and then when I'm not too busy.
You've actually competed for AGF before.
I have. Got my ass kicked twice, but that's besides the point. The really cool thing about them is how they incorporate both IBJJF and Abu Dhabi rules for the gi and for no gi. And they really do run like a well-oiled machine. We photograph a lot of shows, a lot of tournaments, and some organizations, which we will not name, when we show up there at 6, we're supposed to leave at a certain time, 2-3 hours, and we see you guys feeling it, but we also feel it because we're there from the start and we never get off the mats. So it's a breath of fresh air. Like organizations like Fight to Win and AGF, when we show up, they have a schedule and it runs on schedule, and we get to go home at a decent time. Sort of.
Right. In terms of the fights themselves, some highlights. AGF. Evan Cutts out of Be Quick. He had
the truck.
He had the truck. He pulled a calf slicer from the truck position, which is amazing. It's a big thing now. Paulo Miao's using it a lot. It's one of those new moves like Berimbolo where, it's starting to get more and more used as we go along, and they did a really good job. I mean, Be Quick teaches that a lot, but Evan Cutts really put that to use, and I think that's the first submission of the year candidate for 2015. So congrats to Evan. In terms of Fight to Win, I covered that last weekend. They had about, I don't know, we recorded about 92 matches, and half of those were black belts. I mean, it was ridiculous. Seth and Brett put out prize money, so all the former champions of all the absolute divisions in the past got to compete at those. Roberto Jimenez, 14 years old, man. He competed in the adult no-gi champions division, and he made it all the way to the final. Beat a couple of pro belts along the way, and fought Julian.
He had a tough opponent in Julian Vega. He's one of the top black belts in Texas, coming out of Elite MMA. He's only been a black belt for like a year and a half now or so, right?
Yeah, Julian's been a black belt for probably about 2 years, but he did really good.
Black belt since he's a brown belt. Like I've photographed him and we've shot him destroy black belts. Recently at the Mundials, who did he beat? Was it Megaton?
He beat Megaton at IBJJF Dallas.
IBJJF Dallas. That's right. Sorry guys, we shoot so many that we kind of mix them all together.
Yeah, but he did good. Julian won the no-gi in the gi. JJ Holmes. He won. He beat Mike Perez from Atos in San Diego, who's also a native Texan, competing back in his hometown. He beat him in the final by takedown. JJ, phenomenal wrestler, former JUCO All-American, former Division I wrestler as well. He did awesome. So JJ won the $500 there. Tammy Griego out of New Mexico, Gracie Baja. Again, one of the top female black belts in the world. She came in and she pretty much dominated the female divisions. Took home $1,000 for her efforts. Fight to Win was a great event. It was a great show. Coming up in Jiu-Jitsu, we also have Gracie Grappling Cup this coming weekend, which we'll also cover, and the IBJJF Houston Open, which we'll preview later on in the show, right after this message from our sponsors, and also after we talk about Legacy coming up in Dallas, along with UFC 183 coming up this weekend with Anderson Silva fighting Nick Diaz. We'll be right back after these messages.
My name is Carlos Diego Ferreira, and I believe in hard work, in dedication, and drive. I never quit. I welcome challenges. My profession demands I train harder and be mentally prepared for my opponents. If I'm knocked down, I get back up every time. I'm never out of the fight. Pain does not intimidate me. I will accept discomfort. I train hard every day because I know the victory is the destination, but the hard work will get me there. I have heart, I have a drive, I have a determination, I have a motivation. My focus cannot be shaken. I can endure physical punishment. I welcome physical exhaustion. Tomorrow I will do it again. I was born to fight. I live to fight. And I will die fighting. My name is Carlos Diego Ferreira. I am worth trying. I was born for this.
Welcome back to the TXMMA podcast. We're going to talk about some upcoming events. Then we're going to talk about basically preview the Houston Open that's coming up, and we'll wrap this up. So the first one I want to talk about coming up on February 13th is Legacy Fighting Championship 38 out of the Allen Event Center in Allen, Texas. The main event is going to be Anthony Njokuani coming back from the UFC to take on Thomas Gifford. We've got Joseph Sandoval fighting out of Lubbock, Texas, with Eric Big Head Davila. He's fighting Jason Sampson in the co-main event. Caio Machado is fighting Steven Peterson. Tanquinho Mendez, BJJ World Champion, is taking on Evan Martinez out of Octagon MMA. And you've got Evan Thompson fighting Charles Byrd and a bunch of other guys on the card. We'll just preview it from top to bottom. Felix, give me your predictions on each fight. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll do the same, and we'll get through this.
Should we start from the preliminaries up, or should we start from the main event down?
You pick. Prelims.
Let's start from the bottom down.
Okay.
Up.
Now, on the in terms of the bottom of this card, which you can only see if you buy tickets and watch it live, there are actually 5 amateur fights. I'm going to go over basically just a couple of guys on the amateur card that we want to highlight. I'm not going to ask you to do predictions because chances are you probably haven't seen some of these guys. Mm-hmm. But a couple of guys that are fighting that are interesting prospects that I'd like to see or that we're going to be keeping an eye on because we think they're going to be doing good is Jared Trotter fighting out of Bruno Bastos' academy out in Midland. He started in Dallas. He's a phenomenal wrestler. He's fighting Federico Oliveira from Prowalski's gym. Also Cameron Couch, another top amateur. He actually won Amateur of the Year last year on the or not Amateur of the Year but Rookie of the Year last year on our official awards. Cameron Couch is fighting Chris Bickham out of North Dallas BJJ with JD Shelley. I'll ask you for a prediction on that fight because you've seen Chris, grapple, and you may have seen Cameron too. What do you think about that fight?
Cameron's a phenomenal wrestler, first and foremost. I think he's actually one of the wrestling coaches over at Moeller MMA, if my memory serves me right. Chris Bigman has very slick jiu-jitsu, very good finishes, a very active and very, very, very effective guard. But I think this is Cameron's fight to lose, honestly. I think he comes from Moeller MMA. Alan Moeller is actually a very, very talented Alianza black belt. I think he's a third-degree black belt.
Third-degree black belt, yeah.
So Cameron Couch's jiu-jitsu is no joke either. It's just, I think, in this case, a matter of who has the better stand-up, and Cameron's wrestling is definitely superior. I think he is going to win by decision. No offense to Chris Bigman. I think he's just a far better wrestler and grappler all around. I think Bigman has better submissions, but Cameron should have the upper hand here.
It's a good fight. Cameron, this might be his last. He's won a couple of titles already out in Louisiana. This is his first fight in Legacy. But, he's an exciting prospect to watch. He's one of those guys that has, I would say, quote unquote, blue chip potential. He could make it to the UFC one day. Also, he has, he has a kid now. And I'm not speaking personally just because I know them a little bit. So his motivations are really high. And he's coaching and he's on the mats every day. So that's one guy to keep out for. Never going to count Chris Bickham out, but we'll see what happens there. Now on to the main card on AXS TV. We've got Levi Miles taking on his second pro fight against Miles Johns, who's also undefeated out of Octagon MMA. And Octagon with Coach Safe, there's a lot of guys that funnel through there. Even Jason Sampson, that also comes from Moeller's, he cross trains over there for MMA. So this is an interesting fight. I don't know too much about Miles Johns, but I know Levi's skill set. He's definitely a top grappler, but he's got an underrated boxing game that not that many people know about until his last fight against Yanez. He may have shown something there. What do you think about that fight?
Well, Miles Johns has excellent training partners in Sean Spencer and a whole bunch of other excellent UFC vets, and Octagon MMA is one of the better schools in Dallas. Levi Miles has basically been doing nothing but training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and training how to be a fighter with his wrestling, with Brandon Quick.
Johnny Bedford, he's also cross-training out of Fitness Fight Factory, which is
Evan
on their
Cuts,
Evan Cuts, he's also training with him. Anybody in the Be Quick organization, which they also cross-train with Team 515 out of, Egypt.
and Longview MMA as well. But Levi Miles has phenomenal jiu-jitsu. He's another kid that could actually go as far as his talent wants to take him if he stays dedicated and focused. I think Levi's going to win this one by submission.
Yeah, I hate picking against Octagon MMA guys just because I know how hard they prepare. But Levi's been cross-training over at 4 Ounce with Daniel Pineda. He's been training over with Michael Chase Corley and Crew Bob over at Houston Muay Thai. You know, driving 4 hours to Houston to get that training time in. It's his fight. I wouldn't say it's his fight to lose just because I don't know Miles. It may be a super competitive fight, but you know, based on what I've seen, I've got to pick Levi too. Now, the next fight coming up on the main card, you know what? Actually, these aren't on the main card. I stand corrected, but you know, these are main card quality fights. Ross Grimsley, Tristan Grimsley, Amber Stotzenberger Grimsley's husband, is fighting Gio Pakurarayu out of Romania and also out of Octagon MMA. What do you think about that fight?
This is going to be a good fight. I know Tristan Grimsley personally. He's a friend of mine. He does not care. The part of the brain that produces Fs, he was born without it. In his last fight, I think he broke his arm or I think it was his hand or his leg, one of the two.
He broke something.
And he didn't care. He just kept on fighting and won. On the other hand, his opponent, Gio Pakurarayu, is a beast. He has excellent finishing power. I don't know if you guys were able to watch the Best of Legacy episode on AXS TV, but he had an amazing knockout. Do you remember who he knocked out? I can't quite recall at this point. I want to say Steven Peterson, but I'm not sure.
It was Peterson. It was a face plant.
It was a face plant. He measured him perfectly with his left and then just went overhand and boom, just nighty-night. It was pretty filthy. Tristan Grimsley does have a granite chin. He always goes forward. It's just going to be a matter.
Who are you going to pick? Who's winning that fight?
I'm sorry, Tristan. I think Gio's going to win. He's going to kill me. Sorry, bro.
All right, so next one up. Mark De La Rosa's fighting Keaton Gordon out of Chop Shop MMA. I don't know if you've heard too much about Keaton, but he's another guy that's coming up. He's a guy that performed very well in our year-end awards. He's fighting De La Rosa out of Team Takedown. I mean, the guy trains with Johnny Hendricks, right? So, you know, do you think that Mark has the heads up on this fight? They're both 2-0.
I am definitely going to give this one to Mark. I don't know a whole lot about Keaton, no disrespect to him, but I do know a lot about Mark. I've seen him fight. I've seen him roll. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He works very hard. This is probably his fight by TKO.
You know, I think the same in terms of who's going to win. Only because, you know, he has a very superior wrestling background. He falls back on it on fights. I think this fight's going to be a great test to see how far Mark's striking has gone. Not that I know anything about his opponent being too much of a specialist, but I know their gym, Chop Shop MMA, with Rob Stucker. Those guys are well-versed strikers. They've got good submissions too, but I'm assuming that he's going to come in there trying to knock Mark's block off. So we'll see how Mark responds to that. I think he's going to go through it and win by decision, but hey, you never know. So this is one of those interesting fights. Now on to the TV card on AXS TV. There's actually going to be a total of 7 fights on the televised card on the 13th, so that's pretty significant. The first fighter on the card, Andrew Parker, trains out of Team Takedown with Mark Lehman, Kenny Monday, all those top level coaches. He's fighting Victor Reyna out of the Junkyard Dogs team. I don't know too much about them, but I've heard Victor's name before. He's also 5-1 as a pro, which is impressive. Parker's 5-0. So, you know, how's this fight going to go?
This is Andrew Parker's fight to lose, definitely. He, I believe, has a superior training partners. I think he's faced tougher competition throughout his career. At the same time, this is MMA. Anybody can win. Victor Reyna is not a joke. His record speaks for itself. So he is definitely going to show up to fight, but I really do think that Andrew Parker will take this one by unanimous decision.
Next fight up, Sal Elizondo started out in the Rio Grande Valley, has since moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. He is a submission specialist. He's fought, you know, Angel Huerta, a couple of other tough guys. He's fighting Eli Tamez. Eli's 8-0 coming out of Octagon MMA. So with that type of record, he's definitely a UFC prospect. He's fighting a guy here who's a veteran. I mean, Saul is, you know, 5-4. So he doesn't have, you know, a record like 8-0, but he's a tough guy. How do you think that fight's going to go down?
Eli Tamez is actually one of my favorite up-and-coming fighters. I really shouldn't call him up.
You just like his hair, though, right?
He's got amazing hair. Really
beautiful dude, right?
Yes, it's dreamboat, complete dreamboat. But you know, aside from his dreaminess, he's actually a really talented fighter, and you know, he comes from a really, really, really hard school with good training partners, excellent coaches in Octagon MMA. Saul Elizondo, though, he's no joke. He's 6-4. That's 10 fights. That's a lot of experience, and he's a really good submission specialist. However, I do think Eli is going to take this one probably by submission.
I think he's going to have a good game plan. There's no way he doesn't with Coach Safe. Saul Elizondo is pretty much a specialist as a fighter. I mean, he's got serviceable stand-up. I'm not saying he can't stand, but he's definitely more of a submission-oriented guy.
Definitely.
So as long as Eli can stay out of that, it's his fight, I think. Next up on the main card, Evan Thompson, the Titan, fighting out of RCJ Machado. Evan is actually Lindsey Thompson Machado's brother, which makes him Carlos Machado's brother-in-law. And Carlos is the godfather of Jiu-Jitsu here in Texas. Coincidentally, Evan Thompson, on the other side of his family, his dad is actually a karate champion. His brother, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's fighting Brandon Tatch in the UFC coming up, he's also a striking expert. So Evan's got a pedigree, both jiu-jitsu and striking. He's fighting a guy now fighting out of Octagon MMA in Charles Bird that, Charles started with Saxon. He's got a big Muay Thai background. He's a big puncher. He's a big kicker. He's also a little bit shorter than Evan. It's an interesting fight for me. What about for you?
I think that it's going to come down to the grappling. Charles is a great Saxon Janjira bred Muay Thai base, but Evan Thompson has been training Kempo karate all his life. He has a very lateral style, kind of similar to Lyoto Machida's. Very bouncy, not quite Taekwondo, but like he's very elusive. I hate to use that word to describe a Kempo-based fighter, just because it's been so overplayed with Machida. But I do think that they kind of wash each other out with the striking, and it would come down to the grappling and who's a better conditioned fighter. I'd give this one to Evan Thompson.
I don't know. Well, one of the things about Evan that impressed me was the way he was able to handle Everett Gutierrez and when they fought in Dallas. I mean, Everett's a really legit brown belt. He's also a good striker.
He's a striker, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a good kickboxing background. Evan was able to muscle him around the cage. Charles is dynamic. He's athletic. He's a good kickboxer, but he's also a lot shorter. He's a lot shorter than Evan, I would think. I mean, at least 2 or 3 inches. So I don't know whether that plays into the fight, but I think that Evan's probably got this one. Although I do think that this could go either way. Next fight, Evan Martinez, 4-0 out of Octagon MMA, is fighting Augusto Tanquinho Mendez. Now, I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd, so it's hard for me. I mean, they're both undefeated. Tanquinho's 3-0. Martinez is 4-0. I've seen one guy more than the other, obviously, because I cover a lot of jiu-jitsu. But what do you think about this fight?
Keep it standing, Evan. Keep it standing.
Yeah, I've got Tanquinho by submission, unless he gets caught. But he trains over at MMA Lab with Benson Henderson. Has a lot of high-level training partners, including his fiance. Congratulations, guys. I heard you just got engaged. Including Mackenzie Dern, who almost submitted Gabby Garcia at Europeans last week. That was ridiculous. So, with all the things he has going behind him, I've got to pick Tanquinho.
She kind of looked like a backpack when she was on her. She's so little, and Gabby's so not little.
It was like 2 cats fighting over a piece of cheese.
Well, more like a leopard and a kitten, but yeah.
Right. Now, next fight, Caio Machado. You saw him last year in his Fight of the Year candidate. To be honest, it's probably going to win our Fight of the Year for the official awards. He is fighting Steven Peterson, who's much improved after moving over to Octagon MMA last year. What do you think about that fight?
Man, Caio Machado is actually one of the best prospects in Texas right now. He just happened to run into a buzzsaw called Thomas Almeida. That's what gave him the 1 next to the 5 in his record. That said, Steven Peterson, he has really had like a renaissance. Excellent fighter. He has excellent submissions. He recently won a Kimura. I can't remember against. I think was it Cody Williams?
That was a while ago. He beat him, and then he recently won at XKO last year against Ray Rodriguez.
If you've seen the Cody Williams fight, he kind of was on his way out. So if you watch that fight, you'll see the kid has heart. He doesn't give up. However, Caio Machado is upper echelon. I give this one to Caio by finish.
I picked Steven Peterson. He's wearing our logo. The guy's never one to be counted out of a fight, and I've seen his improvement. I do think that he's the underdog, so Caio's definitely the guy that most people will be looking at to win. But Steven, I mean, one thing you have to factor is experience. Steven has 15 fights. Caio has 6. I don't know, what type of experience he's had coming out of Brazil. I don't know, the level of his grappling. I'm sure he's close to black belt.
I think he trains with Igor Santos.
I mean, anybody that's, training with Igor and anybody that's coming out of Brazil typically has a lifelong background with Jiu-Jitsu.
Porra.
But Steven Peterson, he's got, what are those things that, unlike the Patriots in Super Bowl, he does not like to deflate his balls. I mean, the guy's balls are this big, and he's going to use them in this fight, and he's going to win.
Very swollen balls.
Now, next fight up, co-main event, Joseph Sandoval, fighting out of Big Head MMA in Lubbock. He's fighting Jason Sampson. What do you think about that fight?
Jason Sampson is an amazing grappler. I hope I'm not spoiling his game plan, but he has this amazing leg trip where he measures with a kick to the knee and then he just drops down for the ankle pick and takes people down. His submission game is phenomenal. He's an Alan Moulder trained black belt. Joseph Sandoval, however, is no joke. He's had a lot of tough competition. I do give this one to Jason Sampson, probably by rear naked choke in the second round.
I think Jason can probably outstrike him too. I mean, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I haven't seen Jason lately, but he's been fighting. He's been training with all those guys at Octagon MMA. Like Felix said, his low single leg is ridiculous. I mean, it's like he's like Superman or like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. The dude flies at you, you can't even see him, and he takes you down. He's Jason's one of those guys that I think that if he puts his injuries back behind him, like he did, last year, he was injured for a lot. He came back successfully in Bellator. He's one of those guys at 11-1 that he can take it to the next level. So I picked Jason. In the main event, last fight really quickly. I don't know too much about Thomas Gifford, but I do know Anthony Njokuani. He's been fighting for I don't know how long. We've decided the TXMMA.com has been open since 2005, and Njokuani was fighting before that. And he's not that old either. I think that he's going to knock out this guy Thomas Gifford. I think Thomas is fighting out of Oklahoma. I don't know too much about him other than he's fighting a guy that's probably hungry and a little bit pissed off after having just, been cut from the UFC. So I've got Anthony in this fight, likely by some type of knockout or TKO, probably by knee or elbow, Muay Thai style.
Cannot wait to see Saxon's celebration when Anthony wins, because he is probably going to win. Anthony is a beast. His Muay Thai is phenomenal. Ever since back in the WEC days when he knocked out, was it Chris Wojciechowski? He was a little Canadian kid that was very promising.
Wisniewski, I think it's Wisniewski in Polish.
A bunch of W's, no vowels,
yeah, he fought in
whatever.
IFL, he's fought in MFC, he's fought in the UFC. Chris is a guy that, has been around for a long time. Anthony knocked him out.
It's one of my favorite knockdowns. He turned away from it and Anthony just tattooed his shin on his forehead. It was amazing.
So that's our preview for Legacy 39 coming up in Dallas on February 13th. 13th, sorry guys, my ethnic accent's coming out now, I don't know.
Mine too.
Coming up also this weekend, actually, UFC 183 out of Las Vegas. It's going to be Anderson Silva's big return. The Spider returns, and he's fighting a guy who doesn't take any shit from anybody.
Don't
Nick
be
Diaz.
scared, homie.
Don't be scared, homie. No, but let's just go through this card real quick. And, my phone's about to die, and I don't have any other cheat sheets. So I'm just going to name the undercard fights and just say the winner. You don't have to give too much of an explanation. Thiago Santos against Andy Entz.
Thiago Santos.
Richardson Moreira against Ildemar Alcantara.
Ildemar Alcantara is the better wrestler. I pick Ildemar.
Diego Brandao against Jimmy Hetz.
If Diego's got his head together, Diego. If not, Jimmy Hetz.
Rafael Natal, training out of, Draculino's school versus Tom Watson.
I can't go against Texas. Go Sapo.
Ian McCall against John Lineker.
This is a tricky one because Ian McCall has recently gotten over the death of his roommate, Shandel Rosario. We want to see how his head is after coming back from that. John Lineker is a really, really talented fighter. I'm going to give this one to John Lineker just because of the mental game.
John Lineker is a huge puncher. I give it to McCall just because I think McCall will run around him for 3 rounds. Ed Herman against Derek Brunson.
I'm going to go with Short Fuse.
I'm going to go with Brunson. And Misha Tate against Sarah McMahon. Who'd you rather take out on a date? I'm just kidding. That's really misogynistic. I apologize. Who do you pick to win the fight?
Cupcake.
Cupcake? I take McMahon. She's an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. She's also fighting Misha Tate, who has a wrestling background, but I think that only extends out to high school. Now, she did do well against Ronda Rousey, so I don't take anything away from her. But I think Sarah McMahon has a specific skill set that's stronger than her specific skill set, if that makes any sense.
And her Muay Thai is really, really good.
Now on to the main card, pay-per-view. this Saturday. Saturday before the Super Bowl. The day before the Super Bowl. Jordan Maine against Thiago Alves. Pitbull.
Who would you rather take out on a date? I'm gonna go with the Pitbull. Jordan Maine is a little bit too green for Thiago. Thiago is kind of in a resurgence in his career right now. He kicks way too hard, and he's actually gotten really good at the double leg takedown. So I'm gonna take Thiago.
Talis Latis against Tim the Barbarian Bosch.
This is a really good one. Jiu-Jitsu versus Jeet Kune Do. Talis Latis, since he's come back to
Tim
the
Boach
UFC.
is a Jeet Kune Do fighter?
Tim Jeet Kune Do base. Very big into Jeet Kune Do.
That's the biggest Jeet Kune Do fighter I've ever heard of in my life. I mean, the guy's
the barbarian.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Talis Latis for sure. I don't think Tim Bosch has enough grappling to hold off Talis Latis from getting the takedown and subsequently getting the rear naked choke.
I think Boach is the barbarian. He's a big dude. If he performs up to the form that he was in like 2012, I pick him. Joe Lawson against Al Iaquinta. Battle of Long Island or Battle of Northeast.
Austin
region.
versus Long Island for sure. I think Joe Lauzon has the better jiu-jitsu, actually, even though Al Iaquinta is a student of Matt Serra's. But Al Iaquinta is a Ray Longo trained striker, so I'm going to go with Al Iaquinta.
Co-main event, Tyrone Woodley or Kelvin Gastelum?
Can I say WrestleFuck on this show?
Yeah?
Tyrone Woodley by WrestleFuck.
I pick Kelvin by not that. And in the main event of the evening, Anderson the Spider Silva, pound for pound, arguably the greatest fighter in UFC history, coming back against Nick Diaz, who's also the greatest. Well, he's not the greatest fighter in UFC, but he's definitely the one that doesn't give a shit the most. Who do you pick in this fight? Is Anderson Silva going to grow old overnight, or is he going to come back to be Anderson Silva again?
Well, first let's hope that the fight actually happens. Nick Diaz has no-showed. He missed his flight to Las Vegas first, and
He got there. That's how he does. He no-shows everything. He doesn't care.
I
about
think
the
he
stuff.
no-showed the open practice. Hopefully, he will show up the fight, and they won't take the fight away from him like they did against GSP. Anderson Silva, man, I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, Anderson Silva by Street Fighter 2 type.
You don't think Nick Diaz can do anything to outpoint him or anything like that?
I would love for that to happen, just because I am a fan of the 204. But that's Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva just came back from a very humbling loss. I think he's going to be focused. I think he's not going to be dicking around with his hands down anymore. He's going to go straight for the kill. Hopefully, it'll last a little bit, but I just Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva.
You know, Nick Diaz, one of the fights that I saw, I mean, that guy, he has volume punching. And I don't remember, I do remember. It was Carlos Condit's fight against Nick Diaz, and he neutralized him doing what? Kicking him in the leg over and over again, staying away and ripping those leg kicks. I mean, to the point where Nick Diaz could barely stand, but he kept going. Nick Diaz had a similar situation happen. I don't remember who his opponent is, but their style, the brothers, they have very similar styles. They're really boxing based. And if you have leg kicks that, are vicious, like Anderson Silva, who's also just as tall as Nick, if not taller, and naturally bigger, that's a big advantage, man. If it goes to the ground, I don't know. Anderson, he's a BJJ black belt. Nick Diaz is a BJJ black belt. They're both pretty slick from what I've heard. I mean, I know Nick is. I believe Anderson is. He's got some, late submissions. He beat Cale Sonnen by that late submission, that late triangle.
Dan Henderson, Nate Marquardt, all by rear naked chokes as well.
Everything on paper, everything in the analysis says Anderson Silva. If Nick Diaz wins, it's going to be the biggest win of his career. It's going to come out of nowhere. I would throw a flyer on him if the odds, if I was in Vegas right now and drunk and the odds are like 8-1, I might throw some cheese on Nick just because you never know what can happen. But it's Anderson Silva's fight, so that's it.
What's the over-under on Nick popping positive for pot?
Probably the same as yours. I'm kidding. I think I'll give him maybe a little bit of odds on metabolites, but I don't think he's going to do it. I mean, it's a big fight for him. These guys are literally making millions with pay-per-view dollars included. I think that I think he's going to come in seriously. Anderson Silva, Nick has been quoted as saying he only gets excited for big fights. And how much bigger do you get than Anderson? If he beats this guy's the greatest fighter that ever lived. I mean, there's guys like John Jones and GSP coming up, but Anderson's already been to that mountain and back. He's a legend. So
now, one thing to consider about this fight: Nick has traditionally been a welterweight. His last fight in the UFC was at welterweight. He is moving up to middleweight to fight Anderson. Do you think weight will come into play?
Absolutely. I think general size will come into play, especially if they do get to the ground. Anderson's going to be able to stand back up or posture in his guard and stay away from that trickiness using his power and his general size. So, like I said, it's Anderson's fight to lose. So that's UFC 183. My phone is dying, which all my notes are on, so we're just going to go straight to the Houston Open. That's happening coming up. What date's the Houston Open? Do you remember?
No idea, but I don't really know anything about anything.
It's like the week before Legacy or the week after Legacy. Either way, we'll figure it out. Diego will flash it across that screen when this podcast goes live.
And there's this thing called the internet where you can go to and find out the actual dates. If you don't want to take our words for it, we strongly suggest that you check it out.
Right.
Google works pretty well. So,
Use that shit. I mean, seriously, when you guys, when I post a tournament flyer, the first thing that comes up is, where is it? Where is it? The damn thing is on the flyer. Read the flyer. Look at the internet. Do whatever you need to do. Just don't be an idiot online because we will call you out. Basically, don't be stupid. But anyways, as far as the as far as the Houston Open, I'm just going to go through a couple of divisions since we have the list in front of us that I think are interesting, and we'll talk about it. One in Black Belt Masters 4, Ricardo Frangina Miller is going to be in town. Frangina, he's the head guy over at Paragon out in San Diego. He doesn't have an opponent yet, but I look forward to him fighting the Open. He's definitely the favorite there. Now moving on down at Black Belt Masters 2 Super Heavyweight, we've got Raul Gacho Jimenez, who just won silver at the IBJJF Europeans, which is a massive tournament. I think there was like 3,000 plus competitors. He got second place there. He's fighting another guy in Alan Shabaro that's pretty good coming out of Dallas. Who do you think wins that fight?
this is going to be the battle of the Shreks. Two big monsters that are just going to come forward like battling rams. I think Gacho's going to be the better conditioned athlete. Shibaro's amazing. He does CrossFit, but he's really big. I think Gacho's got this.
Better conditioned athlete? I'm not sure. Because Alan bench presses Volkswagens, runs, does the whole CrossFit thing. He's, if anything, in terms of athleticism, physical size, physical strength, Alan's got it. But, Gacho, he's got those really good leg locks. He's well-versed in IBJJF competition. He knows how to score the points. It's a tough fight. I think it's a toss-up. The last time they rolled, I think Alan actually pulled out the win. This time, Raul's riding off his high from Europeans, so he can get it too. I think this is a anything goes fight. Depends who has the better strategy. Moving on down to there's in terms of masters, there's a couple of other guys fighting. Josh Hill is fighting Rob Dembeck out of Paragon BJJ in Austin. That's a good one. Christopher Story, who runs BJJ Classic, which is an awesome tournament that we also cover. No time limit, submission only. He's fighting with the points this time though against Junior Show. That's a good one. Josh Mancuso, Alex Martins, and Marcos Atalante. They're actually fighting at Masters 1 Middle. Who do you think has that one? That's a three-man division. It's really interesting.
Are they going to do two best of two for each of them? Or
I don't know how it goes, but, who's going to win?
If Alex Martins is healthy, I would give it to Alex Martins. Whenever he is healthy, he usually kills. He has a little bit of trouble against his good friend Carlos Diego Ferreira, but he is usually either dominating his division or getting second place. And I think in this bracket here in particular, he has a really good chance. His biggest opponent would probably be Antalante.
Josh Mancuso is also a new black belt, so not taking anything away from him. But Alex Martins and Marcos Antalante are both seasoned competitors. I think it's anybody's ball game between them two. So that's where we're going to leave that. In terms of the black belt adult divisions, which are the most exciting because, they're the guys everybody looks up to. Bruno Bastos actually moving down to adult from Masters to fight John Jordan. What do you think about that fight?
Midland BJJ, baby.
Bruno Bastos, he's a top guy. I mean, he's a guy that's been around for a long time. He's very, very well respected. Just got his 4th degree. So congratulations to Professor Bruno on that.
Was nominated for Metamoris to be one of the competitors.
Right.
Came really close to getting invited to Metamoris.
In the meantime, John Jordan's a guy that's been training. Before he moved back to Louisiana, he was training with guys like Cooper out of San Diego, Dean Lister, those type of guys. So John's not somebody to be counted out. He's also another guy that just got his black belt last year. Bruno's been a black belt for, however long it takes to get 4 stripes. So I give that fight to Bruno, but he's going to have a good one. Another fight, Robert Yamashita out of Elite MMA fighting Philip Miller out of Peak Performance.
Rob Yamashita's had an excellent year so far. I would give this one to Rob for sure.
Philip just got his black belt, so congrats to Philip also. But he's fighting a guy that's been on that top level, or not, he's not a world champion, but this is a guy that's definitely one of the top black belts in Texas. Has a win over Diego Gamanal Nogueira last year at the Houston Open. So I think he's looking to do more this year. It's probably Rob's division. The most exciting black belt division.
This one's awesome, guys.
Black belt middle, you got Sam Snow out of Alianza, Carlos Diego Ferreira, Vitor Oliveira, who won Pro League last year and is a no-gi world champion, Drew Lockwood, training partner of mine out of Elite MMA, Luciano Rodriguez, also out of Gracie Elite, and then Pete Runez, who's a top wrestler out of Travis Luters. Who's got this one?
This one's tough for me because we actually have two teammates fighting in this bracket, in Drew and Luciano. But the obvious favorite here is Carlos Diego Ferreira. Drew has been on a rampage. His game has been elevated ever since he got his black belt. He's a very new black belt as well. Sam Snow always comes to fight. He is an excellent competitor both in Jiu-Jitsu and in MMA. But this is Carlos's bracket for sure.
Teammates aside, I mean, Snow, Drew, Pete, all those guys are great. I don't know too much about Luciano other than he trains,
in Miami
with our team, with our Gracie Elite. So I can't really factor him just because I don't know him. But I think this is going to come down to a final depending on the bracket, with Carlos Diego fighting Vitor Oliveira. Vitor beat Otavio Souza at Pro League last year. He also won No-Gi Pans last year. This is a guy that's on top of his game. I think it's going to be between those two. And if Diego beats Vitor, that's a big win for him. I mean, he's already got a bunch of big wins. But you're talking about Carlos Diego going from the level of, top black belts in the world, fighting against a guy that's one of the top black belts in the world. So that's going to be the final there. Adult lightweight, Julian Vega, Vitor Atala, Rodrigo Freitas, and Omar French. Just make a pick.
Julian Vega for sure. Omar French just got his black belt. He's my countryman from Venezuela, Omar. But this is Julian's bracket for sure.
Pablo Silva, Justin Rader, Spencer Gilliam at feather.
This is a good one, man. I got Justin Rader.
I got Justin Rader, man. Justin's one of my boys. He's a really cool dude out of Team Lovato. I've known him for a number of years. He's proven himself to be a top competitor over and over again, specifically at the Houston Open. I think he's competed. I don't remember him competing last year, but in 2011 he competed. And he's one of those guys that's one of the best in the world any given Sunday. He's fighting against the Mendez brothers, Tankino, that top level, just like Vitor Oliveira, except he's been doing it for longer. So I've got Justin there. That's it for the adult black belt. I'm skimming over the rest of the categories. We'll talk about it just a few more. Let's see here. You've got brown belt masters, one middle is interesting. Shallow Roberts, also out of Lovato. Michael Foster, out of Alianza in Dallas, and Jeff Hammond.
Jeff Hammond, man. I think he's from
Lagogo
Lawndale Jiu-Jitsu. Yep.
He's a Helson Gracie guy.
Very, very, very nice technique. They're more of a self-defense school, but Jeff Hammond's an excellent competitor. Had a really good showing at the Mondials last year, I believe, or was it Pans?
He's done well. I don't know. I think it was Masters, actually.
But yeah, I got Hammond for this bracket.
Now, as far as brown belt, let's just talk about the absolute division, because I'm looking at some of these people on the list. You got Reed Schulger, Jose Portillo, Pedro Migliano, and Ryan Sandhagen. Who you got to win?
Pedro's a teammate of mine. He just got his brown belt. He kicks my ass every time we roll. But Jose Portillo is probably black belt level. Had some excellent X chokes at the Mondials. I think this is Portillo's bracket for sure. Pedro, don't kick my ass next time you see me. Sorry, just being objective.
I've got Pedro and Ryan in the finals, and those two guys have fought, since purple belts. They're actually both reasonably new brown belts. I think their greatest threat is going to be Reed Schulger out of Paradigm. Reed's got a Division I wrestling background. He's also a pretty good jiu-jitsu guy out of Igor Santos, academy. He's a guy that could fight at Masters also, but he chooses to fight adult. Last year he was I don't know if it was purple. I think it was purple belt of the year last year.
He did win purple belt of the year.
So you've got new purples going up against some other guys, some wild cards that we don't know about. But I think it's going to be the two guard players and Pedro and Ryan in the final, unless Reed can impose that top game. Jose Portillo, I've got him up there too. He's got a very tricky guard as well. But I think that some of these other guys are a little bit more well-rounded. Not just in terms of skill, but I'm factoring in size too. I mean, Pedro's a guy that started at middle, but now he's fighting super heavy. And Ryan's just a naturally big guy beat Rolando Sampson the last time they rolled in Houston last year. And, it could be either one of those guys or anybody else.
It's definitely going to be a fun bracket to watch. I'm going to enjoy shooting that one.
Now, purple belt, just purple belt adult. Who do you think's gonna shine? Let's rather than go through every single category. Who do you think is gonna shine in there?
At the adult division, female or male?
Both.
Petya Bastos, of course. Ketra Bartek she I think won Pans as well as a blue
She's
belt.
fighting Petya.
Yeah, like that's going to be
Their
an awesome.
division.
That's actually one of the female fights that I'm really looking forward to watching. Is Vinabadi, but I think he's masters. I'm not sure if he's competing as an adult this time around. Of course, Dinko Bektik is a really fun guy to watch.
Dinko, you're one of those guys that we haven't given you a lot of publicity on Texas MMA.
We just did, bitch.
There's so many people out there. This is hard for us to keep names, but I do want to acknowledge you. You've had a ridiculous year flying under the radar last year. I saw you compete at Fight to Win last weekend. You're a guy that's coming up, so I'm excited to see you there too. Some of the purple belt division I'm most interested in seeing on the female side, adult female light. You've got Daniel Alvarez coming in from her gold medal finish at the Europeans with Victoria Tomei. You've got Laura Hyman and you've got Kristen Mickelson. Not that many people know Kristen, maybe in Texas, but she's fighting out of Andre Terencio's academy in Chicago. Her and Danielle, if they cross paths, are going to be a very interesting fight. The other divisions I was looking at purple, adult middleweight purple is really deep. It's got over 10 competitors. Benji Silva is flying out from Caio Terra's gym in San Francisco, the Bay Area. He's competing against Texas guys like Cooper Cardinal, who's always up there. Giancarlo Bodoni fighting out of Hillian's Academy in Miami. He's flying over. A couple of other guys, so that's going to be a great division. Same with adult male light. You've got Alex Lane fighting out of Louisiana. He's won the AGF Purple Belt Challenge last year. It's a function of how he adapts to IBJJF competition versus that sub-only style. Mike Esquivel, he's performed well as a juvenile at the IBJJF Worlds and Pans and those tournaments, so he's going to be somebody to watch. And you've got Justin Cummings flying out of Hamila Bahal's Academy in LA, so that's going to be a good one. All those guys are good. And then as far as purple belt feather, you've got Mason Monsivai flying out from Atos in Costa Mesa, trains under the Mendez brothers. He's going to be fighting against Matt Kim, Jonathan Naranjo, Matthew Fox, who's probably going to win our purple belt of the year for 2014. Lots of good guys in that division.
I really like Matt Kim in this division. He's Jeff Messina. Didn't he win like a no-gi worlds as a blue belt?
I don't remember. I don't remember the stats, but he's definitely got a tricky game. He's got a tricky berimbolo. But you've got guys like Mason, who's a berimbolo guy, fighting with the Mendez brothers. So if you're looking for good guard play, this is definitely a purple belt feather is definitely the one to watch. As far as the Houston Open, it's coming up. It's a 2-day event. It's a great event. I'll be covering it for the Federation and for Texas MMA, along with Felix if he decides to come.
I'm coming. I want to watch these.
Yeah, it's going to be a great tournament, so that's the next thing that's coming up. Also, some other organizations we want to highlight before we wrap this up, or actually we're wrapping it up now. Some of the tournaments that we work with in Texas, man, like great ones. We already mentioned Fight to Win. We already mentioned AGF. Other ones are BJJ Classic has a tournament coming up. They're no time limit sub only. And my first fear when covering a no time limit sub only event was that it was going to take too long. But man, every match I've watched either ended quickly or went in such a way that you don't have to worry about points. Like some of these IBJJF, it's not that it's better or worse, but it's a different game. Like you're just watching pure jiu-jitsu, pure traditional jiu-jitsu. Like, hey, let's just roll. Let's see who wins. BJJ Classic is great. Gracie Grappling Cup, we cover them all the time too. And Grand Prix Grappling, I'm not sure if we're going to the tournament. We'll figure it out. But they're one of the longest running tournaments out of Houston. They're also another organization that we respect, along with Grappling Games with Amy Rodriguez. She's also, somebody that's great for the scene, like blue belt competitor, like young girl that's now all of a sudden throwing these huge tournaments. They're great. So support these tournaments. Support, all the people that are competing. Like I talked about with our awards earlier, all we really want to do is recognize the deserving. I think somebody called me biased before. Yeah, I'm absolutely biased. I'm biased against people that get their names out there, winners, people that send me stats and help me do my job because all I want to do is support you. So help us, get your names out there to us. We'll be happy to write articles about you as long as it's merit. Like you're not like some bum or some bad character person or whatever. Like we want to get your name out there. Like we want to help you promote your jiu-jitsu career. We want to help you promote your fight career, and we'll be happy to support you as a Texas fighter fighting in the UFC one day, which is, you know, all of your goals, right? So in closing, you have anything to say?
This one may come back to bite me in the ass, but if you feel like you're not getting the coverage you deserve, shoot me a private message and tell me why you think we should cover you, and I'll be more than happy to if we think we're deserving. Battle for the Ages is one tournament that we didn't mention that I think should get a little bit of love.
They should get a lot of love. They're doing great things for kids across the nation. I love that group.
Yep. And thanks for watching. Tune in. We're going to have some guests coming up for the next podcast. Some big names. We don't want to ruin the surprise. We're going to be adding people from everywhere, not just from Texas. So we're going to be bringing you some excellent people to talk to. I don't know if we're going to have the technology to do it, but we're going to try to incorporate viewer participation, have people come in, make calls to talk to some of the people that we're going to be bringing. Lots of big things in store. Mike will be releasing that information.
Our producer, Diego Reyes, we want to thank him above anybody because he's the one who put this together. This podcast was actually his idea. We're going to do amazing things with this podcast. I don't know how it's going to go. I apologize if it was awkward this time around. We just got done, you know, drinking a little bit, and we're just having fun. I mean, socially, just having fun.
We're awkward people.
But, you know, we're here for you guys. Like Felix said, we're going to be able to have guests on the show. We might even be able to do this live. We're going to continue to write articles. We're going to continue to support events. We're going to continue taking great pictures, both jiu-jitsu and MMA and kickboxing. Continue supporting the schools. If you guys want to, you know, do a technique of the week for us, whatever you want to do, we're here for you. So, you know, sincerely, thank you from everyone in Texas MMA, like our Texas MMA staff or whatever. You know, we have no ego. Like we care not. Like I hate being in front of the camera, but like I said, Diego wanted us to do this, so we're doing this. We're doing the best we can. We appreciate it, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.